Hi, this is Doug Hoekstra from True Tone Recording Studios in Nashville, and you're listening to John Broughton on Retrospectives 3SER KC Radio. Every shop and restaurant's closed, clouds of dirt like forgotten thoughts.
Just to kick off, you're noted for the lyrical aspect of your songwriting. Were you attracted to the written word as a young lad?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think as growing up, I always did both music and prose writing as well, and so it's kind of like a two-track kind of thing, and doing a little bit of each within each format. So, yeah, always, basically.
Was there anyone or anything in particular that triggered your interest in music?
Well, I guess it's kind of an old story, and it happened to a lot of folks, but I had an older brother who had a lot of Beatle records. And so although I had taken piano lessons and done all those sorts of things, I think the thing that really, jump-started it on another level for me was when I started poking around through his records and listening to what he had and getting turned on to different kinds of folks like the Beatles and Dylan and people like that. And I think that's what really got me excited and got me in the path of wanting to write songs, really.
Yeah, you're right. That is a common tale, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There's people the world over, who were influenced by those guys. So,
tell us about your pre-solo days and the band Bucket Number 6.
Well, in Chicago, that was like my first band, and we were a band that Bucket Number 6 was a band that kind of did the alt-country thing, I guess you'd call it, for lack of a better word, or the Americana thing before it got labeled as such. And a couple friends of mine and I did that, and we would do, we did all our own material and everything, but, it was in the line of Johnny Cash and Graham Parsons and people like that. And we played the circuit up in the Midwest in Chicago for a couple of years and did a couple of records, and it was a good ride, but bands come and go, and when we ran our course, then I moved down to Nashville because I wanted to do something solo and kind of wanted to be able to tap into the musical community here and the different players and writers and the whole scene that exists here.
Looking back, though, do you think that band may have been a victim of unfortunate timing a few years down the track, and you could have been caught up in that old country?
Well, yeah, we were probably, for what it's worth, we were probably a little bit ahead of the curve, Yeah. At the time, particularly in Chicago, although Bloodshot and everything is there now, and it's very vital part of that scene, at the time there was really nothing going like that. But on the other hand, it's sort of like folk music in the 60s or something, I think there's pros and cons to being part of a plethora of acts, Sometimes if you're part of all that, then you don't stand out as much either. So I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to that situation.
Sure.
So, it was fun though.
Did you know pretty much exactly what direction you wanted your music to take after that point?
Not necessarily, really. I knew I wanted to do things that I think I felt a little. I think anybody who's in a band will tell you there's pros and cons to that too, in the sense that you have a camaraderie and you can play together and you can kind of develop that band sound, and I think that's a good thing that's hard to recreate or duplicate, but at the same time that can be you can be limited by it. And so I knew that when I wanted to go out on my own, that I wanted the flexibility of being able to do different things in the studio and being able to perform live in different formats, from solo to small band to larger band formats, and just kind of have that flexibility to mix it up. And so I knew I wanted to do that. In terms of exactly where that would go, I didn't really have a preconception on that. I just knew I wanted to explore more options.
So the move to Nashville was wholly and solely a career-based move?
It was. I would say, I guess, primarily. I mean, there were other things though that we liked about the city, and I grew up in Chicago, or the Chicago area, and there's a lot of things here in terms of it being a more accessible place to live, and a little more, the cost of living is a little better. It's a little warmer weather. There's a lot of things in addition to the musical end of things that were attractive to coming here for a change. But I'd say it was primarily driven by the music.
It's a place that draws a lot of songwriters. They tend to gravitate there. Did it take time for you to define your niche in the massive songwriting community that exists there?
Yeah, it does. Yes. It's, they say if you throw a rock, you'll hit a songwriter. So many songwriters there are. Well, I knew that coming in because we'd played down here, so I had a little bit of familiarity with the scene. So I kind of knew. And I think I had the advantage of, there's a lot of people who come to Nashville to be a country star or to be a big Music Row songwriter. And I guess it must be like screenwriters in Hollywood or something of that nature. And I think I had the advantage of kind of having done, the band thing in my hometown and kind of having a sense of realism about what I would get from being here, and so in that sense, I think it was pretty easy to acclimate. Because I knew I wanted to come here to kind of tap into the music for music's sake, and beyond the Music Row, the visible part of Music Row, there's a healthy underground here. There's a lot of songwriters that are coming from a different place than the commercial aspect of things. And so as a result, I knew that was going to be the case, and I think it made it a little easier for me to get acclimated.
Did you find it a welcoming musical community when you arrived?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is for the most part. It's like, it's a very, work-focused environment. People are pretty serious here, and that can turn some people off, but at the same time, I think there's kind of like a small town community to a degree where there's such an abundance of songwriters, and there's a lot of people here who move here from other places with similar experiences. Like they did the band thing in their own town, and then it ran its course, and then they're like in a position, well, what do they want to repeat that, or do they want to kind of move on and try to not only take it to a higher level, but get better and learn more. And so it seemed like the time I moved here, there was a lot of folks that were moving here with the same ideas, and I think there always is. And I think that makes it kind of a welcoming place to come into, because a lot of folks have that shared experience. So yeah, I found it was pretty easy.
Now, the first album of yours that I heard was Make Me Believe.
Right.
That seems to be one that did get your name out there more so in general. Do you see that album now as something of a turning point for you?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Because on the first two records before that, they were pretty much self-released, and I was just kind of trying to find whatever, we talked about just a minute ago, whatever kind of voice I was going to come to in my own stuff. And I think Make Me Believe was I pushed everything a little further, and because of that, it got a little more attention, and it also got me, I started going over to Europe a lot on that record, and cultivating that market, and just kind of broadening, I think, creatively and otherwise. It kind of put me in some different places, and I think it differentiated me more from the typical, you were talking about when I was doing my band thing in Chicago. It differentiated me a little more, I think, from the standard singer-songwriter, or the perception thereof, because it's a little more layered musically and things like that. So yeah, in all those ways, I think it pushed me forward.
You're noted as a great storyteller in song. What for you, apart from obviously a good story, is the key to good storytelling?
Well, I think it's about this. Well, a couple of things. I mean, to me, it's detail. There's a lot of detail. I think the really good, and I guess I'm talking from a song perspective, but from the writers that I really admire, be it like Leonard Cohen or Dylan or even people who are drawn more to straight narrative songs like Johnny Cash. I think the kind of material is layered and it's detailed, and a lot of times you can tell a lot of the story through. It's almost cinematic, where you can almost see certain shots, or you see the way people move in a song, or you can feel certain attributes of other senses, the wind and tactile things, and I think those all connect to emotions, and I think that helps in the format of a song where you don't have as much to play with. It helps move things forward. I mean, it's really like the whole creative writing poetry thing, where you have to pack the lines a little more, and I think if you're more detailed with your choice of words and everything, that helps evoke the story.
Do you constantly have your songwriter's radar up and running and looking for song ideas, or is it more of a natural process, just letting the ideas come to you?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a thing where if you do it long enough, your radar is always out and you don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's more what happens. I think everything does have you do see the narrative. I mean, our lives are narratives, and I think that's why people are drawn to narratives in film and story and songs. So I think there's sort of a universal thing, because it helps people make sense of their lives. And so if you do that, if you write a lot, I think pretty soon you see that shape in everything. I guess it must be how painters look at the colors in nature or something. I think you see that aspect, and therefore your radar is up, but it's almost in a way that you're not cognizant of.
Mm. Do you have a criteria you work to decide for yourself when a song is just right and requires no further editing?
Well, yeah, but you can be fooled by that. I mean, I think you get it to a certain point. I think you get to a certain point where it's almost like it has to succeed on its own terms, and that's sort of a nebulous thing to say, but there is sort of a feeling where you feel like, musically the structure's there, and lyrically it says everything it needs to say. And then usually at that point, maybe you'll play it live and maybe you'll record it, but, the songs can still evolve. I mean, I think there's songs that after I recorded them, and I think this is common with artists, I mean, Bob Dylan's a great example of this, that after I recorded them, then you start playing them live and you find another element and they change a little bit more, and you decide that maybe you need to improve this other part or change a key or change a tempo, or I don't know. They're always organic in a way. I don't think they're not necessarily ever completely fixed in time, but you do somehow come to a point where they're ready to be presented, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you'd be writing the same type of song now if you hadn't moved to Nashville? Has the movie influenced your writing at all?
Oh, yeah, I think so, for sure. It's a different... It's interesting when I go back to Chicago and also, other peers that I meet from other places, how different the approach is. I think in Nashville you have a more collaborative approach, even when you're not collaborating. Like co-writing is very popular down here, and I think that's part of the machinations of the songwriting publishing machinery. And I don't co-write a lot, but nevertheless, there's a fabric of collaboration here, I think when you go into the studio, people are more likely to have ideas in terms of how they approach things, and I think they're used to working with a lot of different people, whereas back home in Chicago, it was very much, you grow up and you're in your band and you kind of work within a smaller circle of people, and I think it's more contained. And here, I think because of the people that move here from everywhere and the different, people are hustling around different projects and things like that, I think the whole cross-pollination collaboration thing is more prevalent. And I think that's healthy. And I also think there's just a real focus here on it's almost like the people here who come here and survive are people who have reached a certain level, and so you're sort of like you're pushing yourself to try to be part of the creme de la creme, and I think that's healthy too. So I mean, I think in many ways it's probably shaped and improved, what I was doing for sure.
Now, a reoccurring description I've seen in a lot of the press written about you is that your songs are like 5-minute worlds.
Right.
Do you know who came up with that term?
Yeah, I love that quote. That was a guy in North Carolina, a writer by the name of Philip Van Vleck, and he writes for Wired and CMJ and a lot of other places too. And he got into my stuff pretty early on. He's a writer there, and of course we've become friends because he's always been a great supporter. But I mean, I like that quote because I mean that's really what I try to do, and it's, to me, it's, I guess, the thing that is really in the singer-songwriters, to use that word loosely, that I really like. That's what they do. It's kind of like inhabiting a world between literature and music. I mean, going back to your original question, and I mean, I think that's what people like Dylan and Van Morrison and Johnny Cash and all those folks do, and they work on both levels, and yeah, I think if you can achieve that, that's the height of what a really good song is. It takes you into that world.
Sure. I read an interview where you stated that you were primarily a lyric first songwriter.
Yeah.
How far into the lyric process do you get before you start thinking about the music?
Well, I think it suggests music. I mean, even though I say that, I think people think that, it's funny. It's like no matter what happens, you get, like, if you get praised for your lyrics, and people will overlook your music sometimes. And I guess if you get praised for being a great singer, people will overlook your, I don't know, your lyrics, or everybody has a way they're perceived. And so, I mean, with the lyrics and stuff, I mean, to me, even when I'm writing them, they'll suggest a musical motif. And usually it's pretty accurate. Not always. I mean, sometimes it'll change around. But to me, the words suggest music in and of themselves. And so that kind of puts me off in a direction. Now, that said, sometimes, especially if you're writing something that's lengthier, you'll run into certain, I guess, technical problems with the music where, it isn't spoken word, it is music. So a lot of times then I'll modify the lyrics and drop lyrics and change motifs and I'll manipulate the lyrics a lot, even though I begin there. But to me, they kind of suggest a mood, and they give me a good starting point. And in a way, they suggest a reason for the song existing, because it's like, well, gee, maybe, I'm compelled to write a song about this particular thing in this particular way, and it sort of drives the process too.
Now, nobody could accuse your records of being overproduced or too lush in their production. You've kept it pretty simple. As a songwriter recording their own material, is that important to you, to give the song that space to stand on its own merits?
Yeah, but it's funny you say that, because people have accused me of being overproduced.
Oh, they really?
Well, on the Make Me Believe in Around the Margin records, I guess. On those ones they did. Because I think typically, ironically, there is a standard perception of a singer-songwriter backing. Like I guess something you'd hear on a Townes Van Zandt record or something like that. And I think sometimes when you mess with that, some people aren't. It unsettles some people. But that said, I do try to serve the songs, and again, I mean, it's sort of like the lyric thing. I mean, I try to do things that are subtle but unexpected,
Yeah.
You know? But I think they again, the song a lot of times will drive it. I mean, there's sort of an intuitive thing. There's sort of a setting that, you know, you're trying to get a certain mood depending on the song, and that'll kind of suggest what you're going for. And, you know, one of the things, again, about being in Nashville is you do have a abundance of people to draw on if you're going to use different kind of textures, or if the song's going to call for different things that you think you might need. So.
Now, the prose and short story writing that you do, do you find that more or less of a challenge as a writer?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's, of course it's different. I think in some ways it's more challenging. And I think there's a misnomer that sitting down and writing a story or book is somehow more time intensive. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I do think what it is more of a singular and isolated process. I mean, you're going to write something in prose, and you're going to sit down and you're going to write it, and you're pretty much by yourself, and you don't get any feedback until you maybe get feedback from an editor. And once it gets out there, and maybe somebody will tell you, oh, I like this or that. And so because of that, I think that's difficult, because it's all in that one format. Whereas with music, you have the thing of like, okay, you write it, and it's a process. That's the first process, and then you might demo it, and then you might bring it into, you know, producers and musicians, and then they kind of color it. And then you'll record it, and that colors it, and then you might mix it, and that'll color it, and then you play it for people live, and you get immediate feedback, and you know, you have all these different aspects of it, which I don't know if that makes it easier, but I think it makes it more palatable, and it makes it you get that link of the process. So I guess that's the main difference. I think the daunting thing with doing prose is you're all just there. It's just you and the page in your mind, and you don't have these parts of the process.
Do sometimes songs that are in the process of being written suddenly become turned into prose or short stories, or vice versa?
You know, not too much.
No?
No, I mean, it tends to be, again, I guess it's largely intuitive, but it tends to be, you know, I'm drawn to one or the other pretty much from the outset, and they seem to dictate a backdrop. So not too much. I mean, I guess if I were to look at my stuff from a third person perspective, I'd probably see similar themes.
Yeah.
You know, and similar ideas that pop up in both, but not necessarily the actual subject, you know.
Now, you've just released a book of writings, Bothering the Coffee Drinkers. Tell us about that.
Well, it's a collection of short stories primarily. There's two, it's sandwiched by two nonfiction pieces, but they're all pieces that are kind of informed by the experience of being an independent musician bopping around the world. And so they're not all road stories. I mean, they're little microcosms from that experience, and they kind of play off one another. And the title story, Bothering the Coffee Drinkers, it's about... Do you all have Borders, Books, and Musics down there?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Okay. Well, do they have music in them? Have you ever seen it?
Occasionally, yep.
Okay, so have you ever seen the guy standing in the corner with his guitar, and people really aren't quite paying attention, and he's not really performing as much as he's bothering the coffee drinker?
Yeah, I'm with you.
That is the title story.
Okay.
And so but you get varying degrees of things, and it's kind of all about, you know, it's all about doing it and kind of taking it from an underground independent perspective, and kind of getting to different characters that inhabit in that world. So that's what the book is.
So were all the pieces in this book written with the book in mind, or?
No, I mean, I had written I write about various things, but actually it was almost more of a practical decision, as, you know, as I started to have more short prose completed and published here and there, I thought about the idea of trying to get a collection together, and it seemed to me that it would be better if it was thematic. And so I noticed that I had a lot of pieces along those lines, and so then that's kind of how I started pitching it around, and then then I wrote maybe, I don't know, 4 pieces towards the end specifically to fit that, So at the end of the book, or completing the book, I did speak to that, but otherwise it kind of came about organically.
Now, when performing live, are you playing primarily solo, or do you have a regular band?
Well, I mix it up. A lot of the road work is solo duo kind of thing. Around Nashville, around the Midwest, things like that, I often use a band. So it really depends. And to be real honest, I mean, some of that's, as any honest musician will tell you, is connected to your overhead and where you're going and what you're doing. I mean, it's obviously much easier financially to facilitate a solo tour. So sometimes that's what drives that. But also, I do like the flexibility when you play solo. Again, everything is a pro-con. I mean, I like the flexibility of playing solo because you can draw on all your material at the drop of a hat, and you can personalize the sets a little more, depending on the audience and everything. I think you have more opportunity to do that. On the other hand, I like having musicians there because they can flesh out some of the parts and give the songs a different approach. So, it really depends.
What about in the studio? Has your approach to recording changed much since you began?
I think like anything that you do over time, I've gotten better at it. I think I've probably gotten more efficient. I think I've probably developed a sound that's mine, for better or for worse. And because of all that, I think you have more of an idea of what you want to do and how to do it. And so in that sense, it's changed. But probably the same things interest me, and the same things I'm drawn. You're just following down a path, trying to do it better and move it forward. And I said to somebody that it's kind of funny how it seems like you spend your whole life trying to identify, and develop your own sound, and then once you do, then you spend the rest of your life trying to get away from it. I mean, I think you see artists do that all the time,
yeah.
And so I think then that becomes the challenge. It's kind of like you've done a certain thing and you developed a thing, and you don't want to. You can't be someone else, but at the same time, you do want to expand from it. So I think that's the interesting dynamic you get into as you do it more. How to be yourself and not be yourself at the same time. So.
Where would be your best markets outside of the States? You mentioned Europe before. Would that be pretty much right?
Yeah. I mean, I've done quite a lot in Europe over the last 4 or 5 years, and that's gone pretty well. I mean, I've been in England and Scotland a lot, and then also Germany and Netherlands, and just got back. I just did a Norway tour for the first time, and I had a good response over there. As many, I think, more left of center American songwriters do, or bands, It
does seem to be the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think there's. It's hard to make generalizations. I mean, there's several things. You're from somewhere else, which I think always helps. There's that mystique, but also, I don't know. I think folks are drawn to the. It's hard to make generalizations about a place, but I think people are there's a little more. There's more. People are more drawn to things that aren't part of the mass marketing culture, whereas it's almost a badge of honor if you're not. And I think they seek those things out a little more generally, and I think that benefits a lot of independent songwriters. And I think they're still a little more about coming to a show for a night out and coming to see music and kind of make that an evening of entertainment. Whereas in the States, it's a little more like you're part of a million things going on. It's more of a pop in and out kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's catch a couple songs and then go on to this other thing. Whereas in Europe, my experience has been people are they're more like they come there and they're there to see a night of music, and that's so great because then you can you don't have to worry about changing the world in 2 songs. You can kind of let a set develop and let the show develop more, and that is really welcoming.
So just to finish up, Doug, with another year just about gone and a new one about to begin, what's on your books for the new year coming up?
Well, I'm trying right now. I'm mixing a new record, so that starts. We just finished recording it, and we should start mixing in December.
Fantastic.
So, so that's the first thing, and then we'll take it from there. I'm sure I'll do some gigging on that and take it from there. But that's the number one priority.
Tremendous. Well, look, great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for being so clear and concise at 7:30 in the morning.
Believe me, it isn't easy. Let me tell you. I hope it made sense.
No, it made a lot of sense, and thanks for getting up at the early hour to speak to us. I really do appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for playing the music and for supporting what I do.
Oh, look, we're loving your work down here, and we certainly hope we can get you down here. There's plenty of great venues to play and great festivals where you just slot in beautifully.
Well, it is on my list of places to go. Not only to play, but to go. Definitely.
Oh, good. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
All right. Thanks much.
Thanks again, Doug. Take care.
All right. You too.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.